let's discuss cell formatting. So you may think that it doesn't matter how your cells are formatted within the Excel spreadsheet, but it really can make a big difference, not only for aesthetic reasons, but also for scientific reasons. So let's go a little bit into that. So first off, we're going to look at the number format. So what do I mean by number format? If you look at each of these cells that I'm clicking on, and you pay attention to this upper middle part of the ribbon, see how it says General? This is your number format, and so it tells us how the Excel spreadsheet is storing the value that is within that cell. So each of these is stored as general, but that's not actually the best way. These are all text, so we should change it to text. But these values are not text, they are numerical values, so they are numbers and they need to be stored as such. Notice how Excel immediately gave it a couple decimals now, so now that they're numbers, it looks a little bit differently. Now this is important for two reasons. Number one, whenever stuff is a number, it needs to be a number. So let me give you an example. It used to be that all genetic data, whenever they published it into a journal article, a lot of genetic data was just simply wrong. And the reason for that is some of the coding for genes, instead of taking the data and putting it into Excel and telling it, I'm expecting this to be text, when they just pasted it into Excel, Excel said, oh, MAR, that looks like a month. Let's save that in the date format. And so you'll notice that one of these is a date format. And so it immediately turned that genetic code, which is supposed to just say MAR and then some random number, it thought it was March or FEB, February. And so all of those errors that were not caught and were published, they were wrong. And if they had just simply selected all of the Excel spreadsheet and said, hey, I'm putting text into you, and then placed their data in, they wouldn't have had genetic errors in their code and in their final results. Another thing that's important for us in general chemistry is how many sig figs are displayed. So this data was all taken from a burette, which means that it should have 2 sig figs. But before we stored them and turned them into numbers, they were just general. And so even if you type this in as 29.00, it automatically turns it back into 29. Instead, we need to tell it that it is a number and that this number needs to have 2 decimals. Now notice I could make it have less by clicking this number, this button, or more by clicking this button here. And so that's how you adjust the sig figs. And so you'll need to think about how many sig figs need to be displayed in your data prior to printing or prior to turning it into your professor. Another thing that's helpful is subscripts and superscripts. So I purposely drew out a couple equal reactions here of water. And so on the left we have the electrolysis of water, and we're going to use that just to practice doing subscripts and superscripts. So electrolysis of water is where you apply electricity to water to turn it into hydrogen gas and oxygen gas. And so this is the final reaction. That would be what I would expect to be seen turned in. But how did we get there? And so if I just type this in, you would just type 2, H2O, etc. But then when I get to this arrow, how did I insert that into my Excel spreadsheet? So in this case, you would go to Insert, Symbol, and I was using Calibri, and the subset was arrows, but basically you just scroll up and down until you find them, or you can scroll here, look for the arrow button, and then you would just choose the correct arrow that you're looking for. Okay. And so that's how you would insert the arrow, is just by inserting symbols. Now there's other symbols that you'll use a whole lot. You've got like the degree symbol, you've got the delta symbol, the triangle, all of these things. You would just go insert and then scroll down and find them. If you cannot find them, Google is your friend, and it will help you figure out how to insert that symbol. Alternatively, you can also just Google it. So if you go reaction symbol arrow, and then this little thing right here, what does the symbol mean? If I needed this symbol, you can highlight it, copy, and then paste it directly in. And that is how I got this symbol here, as I just pasted it right here because I wanted my equilibrium reaction to have the 2 arrows. Alright, so those are your options for inserting the symbols, but how do I change this to be a subscript? So in that case, you go to the Home tab on your ribbon, Font, and then Subscript is this button right here, and you check it, and then you hit OK. And then you would just do that to the next ones. Alternatively, if you notice that the B is underlined, if you don't want to click, you can just click B, and the B will make it be underlined. So I can just click B over and over again on my keyboard and it'll cause that to be highlighted, or the K for strike through, or the E for superscript. And so we're just going to do that for each of these, and that would be how you would make superscripts and subscripts on your keyboard. Now I did want to point out that, okay, with this reaction here, I wanted this equilibrium double arrow, and you'll eventually get to in lecture how and why that matters. Now I do want to emphasize there is a difference between these three, and the only appropriate one is this one. So for equilibrium, use this symbol, okay? That's different. This right here, the very last one, is especially bad. This one, it's not great, but this one is the best one that you want to use. All right, now let's say we want to make this look a little prettier, and let's make it bold, and let's underline it. So how did I do that? You can do one of two things. You can hit Control B to bold or unbold. You can do Control U to underline or not underline. So I'm going to leave it like that, or alternatively, I can also just click on it and then check these buttons for you. Control I is italics, and so it's just however you want it to look like when it's all said and done. And now I could click on this one, do the exact same thing, or I can use what's called the format painter. So you see this format painter? If I click on the one that looks the way I want it to, then click format painter and then click whatever cells I want, they will take on the format of the thing I just painted with. And so that's a really handy button if you need to do a whole bunch of things like that. Okay, and then the last couple things to look at is let's do some changing of fonts. So I can change maybe my title. I want it to be red. Maybe I want all of these guys to be bold. And then maybe I also want some borders. So I would highlight everything I want borders around, right click, format cells, border, and now I can choose to put borders on the outside, the inside. I can take off just certain ones. I can make them be darker borders. However you want to do, you can put some borders around your stuff. Okay. Now something else to notice is notice how there's not three borders here. That's because these cells have been merged and centered. And so if you want your text to say, because this is the average, so it's the average of three values, but there's only one answer in that average, I would want to merge all three of them together. And so to do that, you just hit the merge and center button, and then it'll automatically merge and center it. Okay, so let's say I want to copy that formatting of merging and centering into this. I do that format painter and it works automatically. I can do the same thing here. If I really want to copy this format over, I can do format painting and there it goes. But notice it also took away that bold and the underlining that we originally had on this feature right here. And it also took away my wrapped text. Whoops. So sometimes it takes a second to fix things how you would want them. But those are all the features that will help you get to where you would like to be as far as how your data is displayed and turned in.